Once again, we're back on Lutherans Alive with today Lori Tormey, coordinator of the Southwestern Pennsylvania Synod Health and Wellness Ministry. Lori, again, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Before the break, we were talking about that process of people getting involved in the ministry in a congregation, making people feel comfortable with sharing a little bit about their situation, physical, psychological, spiritual, all of those things and how they work together. What was your experience in terms of how people began to accept what that ministry had to offer and actually connect in a way that they began to share?
My experience as the parish nurse in Beaver County, and that's what I go back to all the time. As I look back at that, we watched and waited for the right time. I mean, we just did. You know, the two pastors talked about having something similar to this. One of the pastors actually came from a church that had a parish nurse.
So they had some experience.
So he had some experience with that. And so we just decided that was what we were going to do. They didn't want a team, necessarily a health and wellness team at that time. So they decided to go to the parish nurse ministry side as opposed to the health and wellness ministers and develop a team. And we just started doing the blood pressures. And as people got accustomed to me being there, now one of the churches is my home congregation, so people know me.
Familiarity goes a long way.
Right. But surprisingly enough, that's the church that I don't always have a line at the door. And it's really interesting. And my pastor shares a parish, so the other church was familiar with me. So then I go down to Redeemer, who had no idea who I was, and it speaks volumes to the folks in the Lutheran churches, how they welcomed me and just embraced the ministry. But it's taken all of this time to really develop that trust level. You know, people would come, get their blood pressure taken, and say thank you very much and leave. And as they got to know me and saw me more and more, and would stop me after service if I wasn't doing blood pressures and just say, I have a medical question for you, then that's where the trust level develops. And it takes a really long time, and they're really small steps. But I sit and watch this ministry grow, and I know that this is all in God's time. This is a wonderful time for these ministries to be out there circulating in these congregations in the midst of the world in which we live.
Moving on from that experience then to being in a position where you can help introduce the ministry and the concept to congregations or to interested congregational members. Talk a bit about identifying people that can be a parish nurse in a congregation, or how to comprise a health and wellness team and the resources that are available to make that happen.
Sure. It's interesting, Pastor, because as we started this ministry, we chose a church that we actually volunteered to host the first training and be kind of the model for the rest of our journey. But as it turns out, we haven't had to contact any churches. They've all called me. And how that happens, I know God's in charge of that. So I'm humbled and I'm amazed by all of that. So I don't go out and choose people. They come to me and ask if I will come and meet with them or the council members. And then from those meetings, I give them tools. I give them little articles they can put in the bulletins to ask, you know, to explain what is parish nurse ministry as opposed to a parish nurse ministry as opposed to a health and wellness ministry. To talk about lay people being a part of this ministry, because you do not have to be a medical professional to do this. Anyone who's been given a gift from God can participate in this ministry, and I think we know that we've all been graced by those gifts. So anyone can belong to this ministry, and that's really one of the easiest points of the ministry, is that anyone can be involved.
If you had to sum it up in a couple of succinct sentences, how would you describe the difference between the parish nurse ministry and the health and wellness team?
The parish nurse ministry, obviously, as it states, is a nurse, a registered nurse. for the blood pressure screenings and things of medical nature like that, then you need a medical professional for that.
As we say, don't try this at home.
Yeah. Only because, and other folks can be trained at blood pressure screenings and taking blood pressures, only because you're going to have that one person that you get this really bad number from. And then, then it's the nurse piece that needs to become involved as to where the referral goes and what the recommendations are from that. Mm-hmm. But any other piece of the ministry, anybody can participate. The educational piece, if, say, somebody's in insurance, has experience in insurance and knows the ins and outs. You've got an elderly population out there that's confused about Medicare Part D and maybe can host an educational series about insurance issues. So that's sum and substance of the difference between the parish nurse and health ministers.
As this became associated more so with the Synod and Lutheran Senior Life and Mercy, it kind of took it out a little bit, didn't it, of the congregational focus and gave you a kind of a broader connection as a coordinator that I know enabled you to set some things up actually at the Synod as well. And we probably ought to at least mention how that's been developed and what your vision was for that.
My vision was to have some programs at the Synod office that would be attended by folks who normally wouldn't go to the Synod office, to see the Synod office and see this is where everything happens, and this is where the bishop is, and this is where the assistants to the bishop are. Because I think that's part of being well too, is knowing we hear about the Synod office, but we don't see it and we don't know about it. The support from the Synod office has been just incredible. So what I've done is I've had one wellness program. I'm planning the next one for spring. They're fun days. They're actually fun days. I'll have the smoothie bar again. We made smoothies last time, and we're going to do manicures and pedicures, and then in the afternoon we're going to have Samaritan Counseling come and present a program called The Cost of Love. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing up here at the Synod office. And again, to open it up to folks who normally wouldn't have that opportunity or desire to come up, and they can kind of see where it is and what goes on. And
part of that initiative was actually just to make some space as well, right? That in the carriage house at the Synod,
right.
There is a space where I know you've got some reading resources and devotional resources as well too.
Yeah, well, right now the carriage house is occupied by one of the new pastors. So my office is downstairs where Augsburg used to be.
Oh, okay.
And I have a lot of resources up here. I'm building my library. I am, and that also, yes, thank you for bringing that up. That's a good piece of the ministry too, is to know that there are resources available up here for folks.
We are going to have to take another short break before we come back for our final segment today. Again, thanks for being here and for helping to share about this important ministry.
Sure, you're welcome.